Delighted to have with me Christian Kelly, the director of Quizzing Australia. Hello, Christian.
Hello, Gareth. Hello, quizzes.
It's great to have you with us. Time zones are not always friendly to kind of intercontinental discussions, but I think it's really important that we shine a light on quizzing in different parts of the world. Now, Australia has a quiz culture, a vibrant quiz culture, which we'll get onto, but you organize sort of regional or state kind of level or competitions. Is there much in the way of kind of competition between states, a sort of state of origin kind of thing going on?
We do occasionally run an online state of origin type quiz. Yeah, that's less formal, more of a fun event, but we do that. There's certainly interstate rivalry, but the tyranny of distance is a huge problem for us. So in past years, we have run an Australian pairs and Australian teams events on the same day as the World Quiz Championships and got everyone together in Sydney for that. But when COVID hit, we had to run multiple venues around the country. So we now run the World Quiz Championships, or facilitated, I should say. IQA obviously runs it, facilitated all the state capitals. And we've rearranged our calendar now to have a national quiz day. And the first one's coming up in October in Sydney. So again, this is the chance for everyone in the country to get together in the one room and sit those Australian pairs and teams quizzes then, and some novelty events as well. Tacking them on to the end of the World Quiz Championships was a very long and draining day for everyone.
I mean, that sounds really exciting. There's some really significant developments happening. And I guess for a lot of people, and it sounds like Australia, COVID or the COVID period has been a bit of a catalyst for development in quizzing. Has it changed a lot in the last 2.5 years?
Oh, out of all recognition, absolutely. I mean, I've just talked about the events that Quizzing Australia does, but obviously there are a lot of online quizzes around, near here and the like, and a lot of our quizzes are taking part in those as individuals. It's just opened up a whole new world. I mean, COVID's been a great boost for trivia in so many ways.
Yeah, I think it has. And I look at the World Championship results, and for a good number of years, it'd be like Issa Schultz would be up there flying the flag. But now, I think last year there were 7 Australians in the top 200 of the world. So we've got Issa, we've got Ross Evans.
Ross Evans and Issa are probably the two names that most people would know. They're very active. They were part of the Australia Gold team that made the final of the Quiz Nations World Cup. Late last year, I think it was, knocked over in the semi-finals the Broken Warriors team with 3 world champions.
Yes.
So certainly Australia's proudest quiz moment, an extraordinary achievement to make the final there. So Issa and Ross are our 2 stars, but we've got half a dozen more, sort of not quite the next level, but he's got someone quite young in their 30s, up and comers who are looking to take those next steps over the next few years.
Yeah, it's really exciting times, isn't it, when you see that new blood coming through, starting to get results in the World Championships, but things like Quiz Nations are only going to do them good. Now, you coordinate Quiz Nations Asia Pacific.
That's right.
And for those who don't know what format that is, could you describe it?
Sure. So that's a team format, teams of 4. You can have squads of up to 6, but 4 play on the day. So it incorporates both individual and team components. There are 64 questions overall. Each individual gets 4 of those. They're all topic-based, so you can choose your topics, or if from what's left, if no one else has chosen it. And then so there's 4 for each of the 4 team members, and there's some team questions as well where you can discuss. So it's a really good mix. It means everyone's involved. You can pick topics that change week to week and hopefully suit you at least some of the time. And it means 1 or 2 strong players can't dominate. You need a team, a strong team across the board to do well in it. So we've just completed our 7th season of that. It started as Quiz Nations Australia, but some of the Kiwis got involved, and then some quizzes from Malaysia and Singapore and other parts, and Philippines. So we've rebranded as Quiz Nations Asia Pacific. We started quite small with 5 or 6 teams. We're up to 11 now. It's expanding through the region, and we're looking to get quizzes from India and maybe even the Middle East, UAE in particular, for the upcoming season, where we'll expand to a 13-week season.
How does the challenge of setting questions, how has that changed then since you've broadened out kind of the geographical spread? You can no longer set questions. I don't know if you did, but no longer set questions, which are really kind of comfortable in the sort of the Anglo-Aussie sphere. You've got to deal with a wider range of.
We certainly do. It's always been problematic setting Australian questions because of that state-based rivalry I spoke about earlier. So we have always tended to steer fairly well clear of those because we don't want to be seen to favour one group over the other. But it's a great boon. Again, the international nature of it means you have to search further and wider for your quiz questions. So it's really real positive for the question writers as well, having to look further afield and just be aware of that extra element, with such a broad geographical spread. Not that you can't have questions from the region, but they must be balanced across the board. There's quite a strong quizzing culture in Japan as well. Unfortunately, they tend not to have very good English skills. So that's been a bit of a hurdle. We have had some interest from Japanese quizzes, but the nature, I'm sure a lot of your viewers are familiar with the Quiz Nations format. It's a 30-second time limit. If your first language is not English, it would be a pretty challenging format. So that limits it. But Asia is the future in so many areas. Economically, you name it. So I think that holds true in quiz as well, so to some degree.
Yeah. You talked earlier about trivia, things like Sailor Century, which is a blast from the past to us. It's a long time since that's been on UK TV, but I know the Chase is popular there, and British chasers have gone to Australia, and Issa recently came over and did beat the chasers in the UK. What is that kind of, outside of the serious quizzes, what is that kind of appetite for quizzing in the broadest sense in Australia?
Oh, it's enormous. Australian quiz shows are very popular. The British ones are very popular as well. Pointless, for instance. We do get the UK version of the Chase. Radio, the ABC every evening has a big quiz. Absolutely every weeknight evening. Late at night, people from all over the country ring in for that one. So the trivia, as distinct from quizzing, is enormously popular in Australia. It's just so many people that are good local, their local pub trivia are reluctant to take that next step for whatever reason. I guess it's not just the difficulty, but the individual nature of it. I think trivia is a very social activity for most people, whereas doing it individually is more like a school exam, which is not necessarily something they want to be reminded of. And the tyranny of distance, again, even though Zoom obviously makes a big difference there, it's still not quite the same thing when someone's half the country away.
So you've got fertile ground, but you've got a number of things against you. I guess the kind of just have a go thing is a little bit more difficult if you've got to travel several hours for it. But what are your ambitions for quizzing Australia? Where do you want to get things to?
Okay, so our next ambition is to bring in a second division of Quiz Nations. So this would be the sort of the missing link, as it were, between sort of top level quizzing and the pub trivia. So it would be a team only event, so no individual questions. The questions would be similar to the top level, but just maybe a few more clues added, just a little bit easier. But as I said, I think having an all team format would draw a lot of people through. I think a lot of people are very good, particularly in specific areas. They have their weaknesses as well, of course, which I think is another thing that prevents them from having to go to the next level. I mean, if you know nothing about classical music, as many people don't, then you really could be very exposed at that level. So I think it's that safety net of the team environment that's crucial. So that's our sort of short to medium term goals, to get that up and viable. But just everything is just such slow steps. The progress is painfully slow, unfortunately.
But progress nonetheless, and we can track, over the years how on the international stage Australians have improved. If there was somebody up and coming that you thought could break through on the international stage, would you be able to name them? Do you think there's somebody out there?
Good question. We've got a couple of young quizzers, I said, in their 30s who are very talented. So Michael Logue is one, Aaron Moen, Bevan Thulkenham, and Aniket Kasgawali. So a couple of Indian names, as you probably gathered. So that they're probably the four I would nominate as the talented young up-and-comers. A lot of the Indian diaspora in Australia is into quizzing in a big way, and they're starting to come through the ranks as well, not just those names I mentioned, but at all levels.
What could the quiz community do to help support, and I'm talking global quiz community, to kind of support your efforts and Australia's kind of involvement in the quiz scene?
Sure. Look, I think the World Quiz Championships is the place I would start. It's obviously the highest profile event out there, but I would just question who it's aimed at. It does seem to be aimed very much at the top 100 or 200 quizzes in the world, and that's great for them, but there's a couple thousand people who play it, and potentially another 10 or 20,000 who might play it if it was structured a little differently. So I'd like to see it made a little bit easier. I think it's just too hard overall, and as I mentioned earlier, it's just such a grueling event. Each part has about 5,000 words. So reading that in an hour, just if that was all you were doing, would be quite a task. So I'd like to see some shorter questions and the level just brought down a little bit. I appreciate there are some concerns that it might not be then quite the challenge for the top players, but I think if it's done sensibly, that's not necessarily going to be the case. I certainly approve of the step they took this year of including all scores rather than dropping the weakest category. In a serious quiz, whoever gets the most right should always be the winner. It's fine to have double point rounds and gimmicks at the pub trivia, but not for World Quiz Championships. So certainly appreciate that change, but I think as the flagship event, it could be targeted a little bit more broadly. So that would probably be my number one suggestion.
Okay.
And the Quiz Olympiad, move it around. So, I imagine it's going to North America soon, but come to Singapore, come to India, and head down this way.
That would be absolutely wonderful, and it is one of the great joys of international quizzing when you've got something like the Olympiad, and you do have people descending from different continents and trying to quiz whilst dealing with varying degrees of jet lag. It's an absolute joy.
That's right, but it can't just be the European Quiz Championships rebranded, which is the danger, I think, of it if it doesn't spread its wings.
Well, I think that's probably one of the reasons why it's now been branded for this year as the Ultimate Quizzing Championships. I suspect they've got one eye on that kind of greater global reach. So we'll see where that goes. We have no say over what the International Quizzing Association do. They do some fantastic work, and we just have to see where they go.
And one more thing, I'd like to see the junior and youth World Quiz Championships come back. I know they were a victim of COVID, but I'd like to see them back on my calendar soon.
Yeah, really good suggestion. Talking of great work, you are doing some fantastic work in Australia and in your region. I think people always kind of underestimate the amount of work and effort that goes in to running things, to dealing with inquiries, particularly when you're running a league. Do you get to play much amongst all the things you run?
Sometimes, between organising and I write some questions. I do sometimes play, yes. So I've played the last couple of seasons of Quiz Nations. Michael Oak, I mentioned earlier, has taken over the writing duties for those seasons, so I do get to play in between. But yes, it's my plate's pretty full, even apart from the playing side.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out off your Sunday to chat to me today, and to put a face to the world of Australian quizzing on All Things Quiz. We love it when we hear what's going on in Quiz Nations Asia Pacific. The new season is starting 1st of August. If people want to get involved, how do they get involved?
Yep, they can just Google Quiz Nations Asia Pacific or Quizzing Australia. We'd love to have them on board. We're actually running a free friendly coming up in a couple of weeks, so if people want to have a free trial before they buy, they're welcome to come along for that as well. Just get in touch.
Brilliant. Well, best of luck with that, and best of luck with all your efforts to develop quizzing in Australia. And it's been great to meet you, Christian. Thank you so much.
Yeah, likewise, Gareth. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.